America woke up to heartbreak when the news broke. Anne Burrell, the bold, spiky-haired chef who brought fire to every kitchen, was gone. And not just gone, but they kept cold, but taken in a way no one expected. The woman who had made millions laugh, learn, and live through their love of food had died suddenly in her Brooklyn apartment. But what made this even more shocking was how the story unfolded. At first, people assumed it must have been some tragic accident, but as the details started coming out, the truth took a darker turn. And let me tell you, this is where it gets interesting. It all started on the night of June 16th. Anne was in Brooklyn doing something completely out of her usual world, performing improv comedy. It was new, it was fresh, and according to everyone there, she was loving every second of it. She had even posted proudly on social media about her journey with improv, posing with her classmates and radiating joy. Eyewitnesses said she was glowing, laughing with friends, living in the moment. One friend even said she nailed it. She was on cloud nine. That didn't sound like someone planning to leave this world behind. That sounded like someone rediscovering life. But here is the shocking part. Just hours later, Anne was found unresponsive in her shower. The police arrived at her Brooklyn home early the next morning and found nearly 100 scattered pills, empty bottles, and no suicide note. The medical examiner's report stated she died from acute intoxication, a deadly mix of Benadryl, cetirizine, alcohol, and amphetamines. It was ruled a suicide, just like that. But those who knew her, they weren't ready to accept that answer. They were stunned. Her friends were left with a single, terrifying question. How could someone so full of life hours before end up dead the next morning? That's what makes this story different. This wasn't a person who had been visibly struggling. This was someone who had plans, a husband, a show still airing, a fresh creative spark. And most of all, a smile that lit up every room she entered. This is where it gets even more confusing. Anne had no known history of depression, no public breakdowns, no goodbye letter, no last words. Her fans were shocked, her friends were speechless, and the timeline didn't add up. How did a night of laughter end in pills and silence? One friend said, "It just doesn't seem real. She was always smiling." Others wondered if the combination of substances had been accidental, a moment of recklessness fueled by alcohol that turned fatal before she even realized what was happening. And the craziest part, no one saw it coming. Not her husband, not her improv group, not her co-workers. She had just been filming Worst Cooks in America a few weeks before, still guiding contestants, still cracking jokes, still being Anne. On screen, she was her usual self, confident, loud, and warm. But behind that camera, maybe she was carrying a weight no one could see. Maybe, just maybe, she was silently drowning. In the hours following Anne Burrell's sudden death, a wave of confusion swept across the culinary world. Fans flooded social media with shock, disbelief, and heartbreak. How could the woman who was just on TV last week, laughing, yelling across the kitchen, mentoring amateur cooks, suddenly be gone? Her face was everywhere. Her energy was unforgettable. But now, people were struggling to believe it was real. The official report claimed it was suicide due to acute intoxication. But the people who knew Anne best weren't buying that story. They had seen her just hours before, full of life. Something didn't add up. Let me tell you, this is how things got even messier. The pill count found in Anne's apartment was alarming. Nearly 100 pills scattered across the bathroom, but no note, no final message, nothing to indicate she had planned this. And then came the list of substances in her system: diphenhydramine, commonly known as Benadryl, cetirizine, another allergy medicine, ethanol, and amphetamines. And people started asking, was she prescribed those meds? Was she mixing them by mistake? Or was there something else happening behind the scenes? One friend said something that really made people stop and think. If she had made it through the night, maybe she could have gotten her stomach pumped. Maybe she would still be here. That single sentence raised more questions than answers. Was it really suicide? Or was it a terrible accident that spiraled out of control? Some close to her believe Anne may not have wanted to end her life at all. Maybe she was just trying to escape, to quiet her mind, to numb something. But things went too far, and destiny took an unexpected turn. Behind Anne's bold personality was a woman who had spent over a decade in the spotlight. From cookbooks and television shows to endless appearances and public pressure, Anne had been on for years. And as one insider put it, people with big personalities sometimes mask things. That line echoed through the community. Was Anne masking her pain all along? Was the laughter a shield? Friends admitted that while she seemed happy on the surface, there had been signs that something wasn't right. She had once mentioned feeling overwhelmed, tired of the spotlight, unsure if the fame brought real happiness. And yet, she had just gotten married a few years ago. She had a loving husband, a career still moving, and a new world opening through improv. That's what confused people the most. Why would someone with so many beautiful things happening suddenly give up? What makes this story different is the silence, the unanswered questions, the pieces that didn't fit, and the timeline that kept twisting. This wasn't someone who was planning her exit. This was someone who had just stepped into a new chapter. But here's the shocking part. Even though everyone was looking for answers, no one could agree on what really happened. The medical report was clear, but emotions told a different story. It felt like Anne was caught between two worlds, the one where she smiled and inspired others, and the one where she quietly battled things no one ever saw. Her closest friend said she wasn't a downer. She brought joy wherever she went, and that made this tragedy even harder to understand. As people dug deeper into the timeline, one thing kept popping up: the improv show. That night, something changed. Some say the alcohol lowered her guard. Others say it gave her false confidence to make a reckless decision. Whatever the reason, the line between joy and danger blurred. And by the time the night ended, Anne was already slipping away. As the investigation unfolded and the world tried to process Anne Burrell's heartbreaking end, more disturbing questions began to surface. People started rewatching her recent episodes, searching for signs they may have missed. Could her smile have been forced? Was there a sadness hiding behind the laughter? Fans who had adored her quirky expressions and loud, unapologetic attitude began seeing something different, not in her words, but in her eyes. A tiredness, a heaviness, a possible cry for help hidden beneath every joke. This is where it gets interesting because it wasn't just strangers looking for answers. Her own colleagues were starting to feel the same. One person from the Food Network who chose to remain anonymous shared that Anne had started pulling away weeks before her death. She still showed up, still delivered on camera, but there were moments when she would suddenly go quiet, drift into her own world. They said, "We didn't know what to make of it. She was still Anne, just more distant." Another friend remembered a conversation where Anne had mentioned feeling exhausted from performing all the time. At the time, no one took it too seriously. After all, she was a performer. Wasn't that just part of the job? But the craziest part? There were no warning signs loud enough to raise alarms, no breakdowns, no public meltdowns, no farewell posts. It was almost as if Anne had been living two lives, one that the world celebrated and one that she kept locked away. And in the silence between those two lives, something went terribly wrong. The timeline was haunting. From performing on stage, glowing with happiness, to being found in her shower hours later, surrounded by pills. It didn't make sense. And the more people tried to make sense of it, the deeper the mystery grew. One theory began circling online that Anne might have taken the pills, thinking she could sleep off her anxiety or numb her exhaustion, never realizing how deadly the mix could be. Alcohol when mixed with allergy medications and amphetamines, can turn fatal fast. It only takes one bad decision, one moment of clouded thinking. And Anne may have never intended to go that far, but she did. And now the world was left with the result, a tragic ending with no explanation. Meanwhile, fans were not only mourning her loss, they were also questioning the culture she had been living in. The celebrity chef world is full of pressure, competition, and impossible standards. Always be funny, always be creative, always be available. Anne had been in that world for over 10 years. One industry insider admitted, "People think the kitchen is just about food. It's not. It's about survival, emotional, physical, mental." And Anne, despite her strength and charm, may have reached her limit. What makes the story even more painful is that it wasn't just Anne's story anymore. It had become a mirror for so many others. Other chefs, other performers, people in high-pressure jobs who were silently struggling behind their success. The tribute that aired on Worst Cooks in America said it all. A quiet black screen, her name, her years of life, and no words. Just silence. And then a message that shook the audience. If you're struggling, speak up. Don't suffer in silence. You are not alone. But by then, it was too late for Anne. The woman who had turned cooking disasters into masterpieces, who had brought laughter into kitchens across America, was gone. And all that was left behind were memories, questions, and the heavy truth that no one truly knew what she was going through. As the dust settled and the headlines began to fade, what remained was a haunting silence. Anne Burrell's fans continued to scroll through her last Instagram post, trying to connect the dots. A smiling photo with her improv crew, a caption filled with pride. She had written about how much fun she was having. There was no sign of sadness, no sign of despair, and that's what made her story so unforgettable and so tragic. Destiny took an unexpected turn, and no one saw it coming. People close to Anne kept repeating the same thing. She was the life of the party. One friend said every day was a celebration for her. Even on her bad days, she found something to laugh about. But behind that laughter may have been pain she kept hidden from the world. Her husband, Stuart Claxton, stayed quiet in the days following her death. The couple had only married a few years ago. They had shared moments of love and support in public. But now he was left alone, and the world wondered, did even he know the depth of what Anne was feeling? The more people looked back, the more they realized how much pressure Anne had been under. From the outside, her life looked perfect. A hit show, cookbook deals, fame, fans. But fame can be a heavy crown. Always being watched, always having to perform, always pretending to be okay, even when you're not. And sometimes the strongest people, the ones who make everyone else feel better, are the ones silently struggling the most. That was the painful lesson Anne's story left behind. In her final episode of Worst Cooks in America, Anne was just as viewers remembered her. Sharp, funny, passionate. But knowing what we now know, watching her on screen felt different. It felt like a goodbye no one knew was happening. The black screen tribute at the end of the show wasn't just a moment of silence. It was a wake-up call. A crisis hotline appeared, urging anyone who was struggling to reach out. The Food Network chose not to glamorize her death. Instead, they sent a powerful message: you are not alone. And that message echoed across the internet. Fans shared their own stories, struggles with anxiety, depression, exhaustion. They saw themselves in Anne. They felt her pain, even though they never got to hear it in her own words. One fan wrote, "She helped me through so many hard days. I just wish someone had helped her through hers." That comment, like so many others, captured the heartbreak of losing someone who gave so much joy to others while carrying a burden no one saw. The culinary world didn't just lose a star. It lost a soul, a bright, loud, fearless woman who had more to give. Her death was a tragedy, but it started a conversation that needed to happen about mental health, about the pressure to always be okay, about the importance of checking in, even with the people who seemed the happiest. Anne Burrell's story wasn't supposed to end this way, but it did. And now her legacy is more than food and laughter. It's a reminder that behind every smile, there may be a story we don't know, that even the strongest lights can flicker when no one is watching, and that sometimes all it takes is one moment, one misstep for everything to change. So if you're watching this and you're hurting, don't carry it alone. Talk to someone. Reach out, because Anne's story doesn't have to be anyone else's. And because the people who light up the world deserve to be seen, heard, and saved too.